Chiropractic is for everyone, but I am not everyone's chiropractor. Whew. Let's sit with that for a second. You don't have to be all things to all people. And especially if you are listening to this, you want to be the best in one thing, which means by definition that you cannot be the best at everything. Attention chiropractors, slayers of subluxation, unleashers of the imprisoned impulse, and protectors of the developing brain. Welcome to the Cranial Doc Podcast, where we master the work that actually changes lives. Craniopathy, nervous system-based care, and the business systems that let you scale without selling your soul. I'm Dr. Anthony Pellegrino, pediatric chiropractor, certified craniopath, and proud automation geek. Let's dive in. What's up there, my subluxation slayers? Now, I'm excited to have this conversation with you today, and it's a little bit different because we have been in practice here in New Jersey for 10 years, and over that time, I've been really vocal about my journey, going from trying to have somebody else's practice, thinking I want to see 1,000 visits a week, realizing that I never really want to do that, going from low fee to high fee in the middle of COVID, and really going from just saying I'm a pediatric chiropractor from the get-go to like actually owning that authority. And a lot of what I've recognized is the difference between good to great, authority to not, is these concepts of when you first start in practice and somebody's like, can you help me? And you're fired up about chiropractic. You're like, I could help anybody, right? Neck pain, back pain, ingrown toenails, kids with this, kids with that. It's like, no question, I can help you, right? And that's very important. And obviously it's true. We can always do that. We can always help people, whatever that is. Maybe not in the way that they think, maybe not with their symptoms, but the philosophy, right? We're better without nerve interference than with it, right? Just boil it down to that. But what I've really recognized as we've grown in practice is saying no, and bear with me, right? I don't want to philosophically punch you all in the nuts this early, but saying no is more important than saying yes. Being really clear about your niche and area of expertise is the biggest level of authority. And so when somebody asks, can you help me? The answer, as you kind of graduate in practice, it becomes, I don't know, we just have to do an evaluation first. I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. If they call in, they're calling in for a reason, right? Yeah, we've helped people with this, but I have no idea what's going on with you. So let's do an evaluation and find out. And of course, that's a big, really easy piece. And it's just the push away. And it is so true, right? Because, if somebody comes into your office and they want to know if you can help with something that a million people have seen help with, and you do an evaluation and you're like, there's no subluxation to correct, you cannot help them with that thing. But let's call it what it is. There's no subluxation to correct, we can't help them. So we don't know what's going on. I don't know the patterns. I don't know what's going on in their body. There's clear and specific things that we're looking for that kind of help us call our shots a little bit. But philosophically, they're better off without nerve interference and with it. They're better out without subluxation and with it. But we have to do an evaluation to be able to see the severity of, right? That, like, we're going to call it what it is. Then there's this next level of that, right? Which is that as you kind of graduate in practices, and this is going to be really hard to stomach, right? I take this from TRP and Stephen Franson, and I think that it's something that's so important for us to get, which is this. Get ready for the land, right? Chiropractic is for everyone, but I am not everyone's chiropractor. Whew. Let's sit with that for a second. Chiropractic is for everyone, but I am not everyone's chiropractor. Meaning, you don't have to be all things to all people. And especially if you are listening to this, you want to be the best in one thing, which means by definition that you cannot be the best at everything. Okay? I think that that's so important to get there because I, in my office, am an expert in brain development and cranial work. That's what we do. So if some athlete comes to me with knee pain, and that's their primary issue, I'm just not the best person for that. And I'll be clear and say, hey, this is what we will do. But if you want somebody directly to work with your knee, here's the person that would do that, right? Chiropractic is for everybody. I am not everybody's chiropractor. And that goes for the symptom level as well as for the process level, And I think that this is something that's really important. And when I work with docs, it's like a huge thing, which is I only do care plans in my office. I only do people who want a high level of commitment, both time, energy, and money. I put so much of my life investing back into the practice, the way we run our practice, our systems, investing into further systems and procedures, and developing my team and developing my docs to be the best at what they do. I put so much into that. I require a high level investment of time, energy, and money from my patients. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. It's just something that I recognize. So even if somebody niche-wise has the symptoms that I work with every day, if they are not willing to go through investing their time, energy, and money into the thing that we do, I can't help them, and I'm not going to, right? I think that everybody's life would be better. Crazy example. I think that everybody's life would be better if they drove a Ferrari. I think that sounds awesome. That's an awesome thing. But not everyone is going to do that. And it's just what it is. Not everybody, nobody walks into a Ferrari dealership and complains that it costs more than a Honda Civic. That's the thing that you go there for that specific thing. And of course, you can't really walk into a Ferrari dealership, so that's another conversation. But I hope that this analogy is making sense. So with that being said, the other piece there is that we have to be okay with the joint exists for a reason. Somebody might be my exact avatar in terms of these symptoms that they have going on, but not in terms of their ability and want and desire to invest their time, energy, and money into it. In which case, they should see a chiropractor. They should just see a different one. Now, in my area, it's something that's a little bit easier. I've been transparent about this. If you go search chiropractor near me from my office and you do a radius of 10 miles, you will see, last time I counted 3 years ago, 121 chiropractors in a 10-mile radius of my office. That's a lot. You'll see multiple CACCPs, you'll see many different pediatric chiropractors, and the important thing as well is that my office is a mile from the beach. So if you were to draw a circle radius around my office, you'll see that not only is there 121 chiropractors in a 10-mile radius, but half of that radius, there's none because it's in the Atlantic Ocean. So take a circle, cut it in half, and there's still 121 chiropractors. There's a lot of different people, which of course is bad because there's competition, but it's great because there's competition. So it just lets me say, sweet, if somebody wants to come to me, completely takes the pressure off of me to not do things in my exact way. Because the whole thing all the time is like, somebody doesn't want to commit to your care plan. And it's, well, some care is better than no care. And it's like, hell yeah, you're right. So they should go somewhere else for that. They should go to one of the other people who is good in that and is okay with those systems and is okay with maybe not getting the depth of the results that you get. That's something that's totally fine. So with that being said, we are always looking in every case that we have, and we've just really kind of audited, let's say, our 3 different niches, which is adults with TMJ, kids with brain development, and then infants with feeding and challenges in plagiocephaly. Each one of these different things has 3 different components that we look for, okay? 3 different components that we look for. And those 3 things are things that only we look at in a simultaneous fashion. And so we're going to use the pediatric brain development piece for this example, right? And so this is really important so that, and I took this from Dr. Amy Spolstra, is whenever somebody enters in our office, our job is to ask and answer some very important questions. And those questions have to do with the domains that we look at, okay? For us, when we're looking at a child with brain development, there's a few different things that we're looking at. Number 1 is going to be their nervous system adaptability. Number 2 is going to be their cranial function and airway. And then number 3 is going to be their overall brain development, okay? So from a chiropractic standpoint, when we look at this is nervous system adaptability. Well, what are we looking at here? Well, this would be measurements like HRV. This would be our subluxation-based evaluation. This is the number 1 thing that we look at as a neurologically based chiropractor. Is their nervous system stuck in fight or flight or rest and digest? Can they not be able to cross path? Can they not adapt when appropriate? Are they stuck in one? Not to ref on that, but that's the really easy, most important thing. And the biggest thing that opts in that somebody needs chiropractic is that nervous system adaptability. Number 2 is going to be the cranial function and airway. So we could be assessing things like tongue function. We're going to look at cranial imbalances. We're going to look for compensation patterns. We're going to be looking for mouth breathing, snoring, different pieces like that, right? This is really where we go deep with our foundations of cranial adjusting, level 1 and level 2. If you want that information about how to train on this stuff, you can go to thecranialdoc.com/training. chiropractor.com/training, and you'll see on there that all of our dates and everything else like that, of everything that's open, you can get registered for and come train with me, either at my office or in the future elsewhere, depending on where you're listening to this. But this is where we're looking at for CSF flow. And of course, there's a ton of different indicators that we're looking there to know if there's something that's going on there. The actual indicators we're looking for right now aren't important. Let's just keep it high level. And then the third, of course, is going to be like brain development, right? And so what are we looking at? This is really where the Dr. Amy Spolstra and the Focus Academy comes in terms of what we look at here. So this is, of course, going to be if our nervous system was in fight or flight during development, did we deflect off of the typical path of development? And we look at brain as a trajectory. I'm not going to give away her stuff. You should totally take her program. But this is where people look at, oh, primitive reflexes are the problem. But we don't look at primitive reflexes as the problem. We look at retained primitive reflexes as an indicator that the nervous system was stuck in fight or flight during that time and that their nervous system has had to adapt. And that the other deflections that we're seeing and symptoms that we're seeing showing up in terms of their development, how they maybe did a deep dive in one area of development, how they strayed away from another area of development, those are all indicators of how the brain was not able to go through its normal and typical trajectory. And again, if we correct subluxation, start to wire those pathways, and then give them some right now strategies and homework to be able to create those pathways, they can start to begin to actually let their brain better process, engage, socialize, learn, develop in their world, and which is where that different component comes in. Okay, so long story short, look at your three things, okay? And I'm going through these things really quickly just for a specific reason, because here is the deal. There are lots of different providers who work with each of these areas, okay? Every chiropractor works with nervous system adaptability. If their nervous system isn't adapting appropriately and there is no subluxation, they should do yoga and meditate and do breath work. That's what they should do. If they're subluxated, they should get adjusted. That's what they should do. Like, that's what they should do, okay? The second, cranial work, okay? Well, there's other providers who work with the cranium too. If it's just the cranium in itself, they can see a craniosacral therapist. They could see somebody who does dynamic body balancing. They should see a speech and language pathologist. Shit, they should see a dentist and get a palate expander. Like, they should do all of those different things. And there's tons of different providers that would work with that. Or maybe they just see a chiropractor who does cranial work who's okay with just doing one adjustment and treating their symptoms. Like, they should do that. The brain development piece, see the pediatrician, go to OT, go to PT. If that's the only thing that's going on, if that's the only piece of the puzzle, the only positive indicators, I am not the right provider for you. There's other people out there that will specifically address that indicator, specifically address that symptom. However, when two out of those three, if it's nervous system adaptability and cranial dysfunction, nervous system adaptability, maybe not cranial dysfunction, but brain development piece, and those two things together, if it's all three, the more positives we have in that triangle, the more it's like, I am the one person that can help you. So if somebody comes into my office and they have nervous system adaptability problems, right, and they don't have cranial dysfunction, they don't have brain development problems, they can probably see a chiropractor that would get similar results that I would get much less expensively and invest way less because they don't need my amount of expertise. And I, of course, charge for that level of expertise. And of course, people still want to come to us because they're like, I want the best care. And we still do that, of course. But if it's just that one thing going on, it usually isn't. But if it is, there are people that would do it the same for cheaper, right? That's just the case. But when you start to see these other pieces all coming in and you can educate that and communicate that, there's no one that's going to put nervous system adaptability and cranial dysfunction together like we are. We quarterback that case, right? There's no one that's definitely going to put those three pieces together. I'm subluxated, nervous system adaptability, cranial dysfunction, and I have deflections and brain development. If all three of them are going on, stamp your flag. I know for a fact that if you don't get care in my office, you are going to continue to chase your tail and chase your symptoms forever. Because the only place that can integrate those three things is my office. We're the only ones who do that, okay? There's probably other places, but few and far between people do stuff at our level to be able to integrate those three pieces, okay, in the world. And I want you to do that. So go check out the cranialdoc.com training and come study with me. So this is the point. This is the point of what we're looking at. What's your niche? What's your big thing? What's your indicators to say, if this thing is going on, sure, I can help with that. But if it's only that, go somewhere cheaper. Go to the joint, right? If something's just stiff and they don't need a very specific adjustment, what's wrong with going to the joint? There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with that, okay? There's nothing wrong with that. But, right, McDonald's exists for a reason. People go to McDonald's. Of course, not the best quality food, but whatever. Not everyone needs to go to a 5-star steakhouse to eat. Not everyone needs to do that. Let's call it what it is. Some people, they can get by with this. They don't need that higher level, okay? When someone needs that higher level, we can have our triangle of trajectory and say, hey, this is exactly what's going on. This is what I'm finding. If it were just this, I'd say, hey, just go see that person, and maybe you should still do that. But because I'm seeing both X plus Y plus Z, this is the thing that we do here, and this is the care that we give. So what is the big important takeaway here? Have your triangle. I think that having 3 instead of 2 is something that's very important, and it's just the way that it's dropped down. If I look at all of our niches, we have a 3-legged stool for every different thing that we see where we are the expert on it. It just comes down to a 3-legged stool always, okay? Number 2, repeat after me. Chiropractic is for everyone, but I am not everyone's chiropractor. Sure, it's okay. We should be referring outside the profession when that's appropriate. We should also be okay with referring inside the profession when either A, something is outside of our area of expertise and there is someone around who has that level of expertise that they need. I am always so humbled when I get pediatric referrals for their patients from other chiropractors. And it makes me very happy. And not just for their own kids, like that happens, but for their patients. That makes me really happy, not just because, yeah, I've done the work, but more because it's like for someone to have the authority to recognize and say, hey, this is not my area of expertise. I'm an expert at this one thing, and this falls outside of that. I think that you need an expert. To me, if you are that person that's okay with that, great, good for you. For me, if I have a patient with neuropathy, they've got something that I think that they could benefit, like with soft wave or a host of other symptoms that aren't in my area of expertise, I am referring them to other chiropractors all of the time if it's outside of what I want to do. If somebody just wants, not just if they want a quick crack, right? Like they just don't want to fit into doing my kind of care plan. They don't want to invest. I'm always sending people to the chiropractor that I think that they would best work with. And I think that it's important to be able to have that. So if you have your list of things that you don't do or aren't at the expert at, like good for you. You're a good person. You're a good doctor. Because you said no to this thing, that means you can say yes to being really good at other things. And I think that's really important. And so that, of course, goes to our area of expertise. But then also like, hey, I think that I could probably help with this person. And I am an expert at something, so I charge a premium. That person maybe doesn't need my level of expertise to get help with this thing that they're looking for. So I'm okay referring them to someone else, right? I think that that's completely okay. I used to work in a bike shop growing up, and people would come into the bike shop and we sold really expensive bikes. That's what we did. Bicycles, not motorcycles. And when someone came in and they just didn't want to invest that amount of money into the bicycles that we sold, we weren't like, oh, F off. You don't get a bicycle. We were like, yeah, totally get it. Not everybody needs a bicycle like this. If you go to the place down the road, they probably have what you're looking for. And there was nothing wrong with that, right? There's nothing wrong with that. And just be okay with that. So chiropractic care is for everybody. I'm not everybody's chiropractor. Have your 3 things and be able to communicate and show and demonstrate graphically. This is the thing. If there's, if you just have this one thing, this is who I would send you to. When we see 2 out of 3 or all of these that are showing up, I'm the one person to be able to help you. And then raise your fees appropriately. Anyway, that was a fun conversation. I hope that I made any sense at all. This is a big thing that we've been working on, and just kind of really being able to verbalize something that we've been saying for the last 6 or 7 years in practice. And really just with this podcast and our email list at thecranialdoc.com and the new trainings that we have at thecranialdoc.com/training, being able to really just verbalize, oh, this thing that we do works really, 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 really well. We've just never really put a name on it. And so you're getting to be here for the benefit of seeing us put a name on it. Anyway, go out there, slay some subluxations with reckless abandon, and just be the freaking best, boss. You are awesome. Your patients deserve it. Let's get more people face down with high value. Later, Gator. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Cranial Doc Podcast. I hope you got a ton of value out of today's episode. And if you did, it would mean the world to me if you jumped over to iTunes or your favorite podcast player of choice and subscribed, rated, reviewed, and shared this episode with a friend that you know could benefit. We have a ton of this information and more in our free email series at thecranialdoc.com. So go ahead and jump on there, subscribe, and get me raw, unfiltered in your inbox every week, changing your practice. Can't wait to see you for the next episode.